Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Indian Parliament elects Om Birla as Speaker of the lower house for a second time in a row. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulates Om Birla for being elected. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange walks free after reaching plea deal in the US court. His years-long legal battle ends. Mass protest against new taxes turned violent in Kenya. Parliament compound stormed, buildings set ablaze. 5 casualties reported. Indian High Commission issues advisory. Russian Defense Minister speaks with his US counterpart for the first time in more than a year. Warns of the danger of further escalating the situation through continued supplies of American weapons to the Ukrainian armed forces. Bharatiya Janata Party MP Om Birla has been elected as the Speaker of the lower house of Indian Parliament on Wednesday. The NDA candidate was elected as the chair of the lower house for the second consecutive time. Following the win, Om Birla was congratulated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi, both of whom escorted him to the Speaker's chair. The 18th Lok Sabha witnessed a rare contest for the Speaker's post on Wednesday between Bharatiya Janata Party's Om Birla and K. Suresh of the Congress after the NDA government and the Indie group of opposition parties failed to arrive at a consensus. However, Om Birla was elected by voice vote as the opposition did not demand for division. Praising Om Birla's previous term, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that under his term during the 17th Lok Sabha, many historic decisions were taken.
संसद में जो ऐतिहासिक निर्णय हुए आपकी अध्यक्षता में सदन के माध्यम से जो सुधार हुए हैं ये अपने आप में एक सदन की भी और आपकी भी विरासत है और भविष्य में 70वीं लोकसभा के संबंध में जब विश्लेषण होंगे उसके विषय में लिखा जाएगा तो भारत के भविष्य को नई दिशा देने में आपके अध्यक्षता वाली 70वीं लोकसभा की बहुत बड़ी भूमिका रही है.
All right, our correspondent Dibyendu Model is joining us to get us more. Dibyendu, just a while back we saw Om Birla being elected as the Speaker of the Lok Sabha for the second consecutive term. This indeed is historic because the very process was historic when we talk of the way the Speaker was elected, because it has happened after decades that both the opposition and the ruling NDA, they put forth their respective candidates for the post of Speaker, and finally we saw Om Birla being elected through voice vote. To begin with, let us get more from you. What do we look forward to? Because the opposition parties, the leaders, they express their expectations from the Speaker to talk of his tenure ahead. What are the challenges and what are the important aspects of his term as the Speaker for the second time?
Well, Preeti, as we were discussing in the morning today, if you remember, I said that the election of the Speaker would be a smooth sail, and that's what we witnessed during the election of the Speaker. I was inside the gallery of the Lok Sabha when the election was happening, and the opposition did not even ask for a division vote when the pro-term Speaker announced that who are in favor and who are not in favor of the election of the Speaker. So, of course, it was, of course, through a voice vote, as we saw. The opposition, the Speaker put the motion to vote, and both the opposition as well as the ruling party raised their hand in favor of or in against, and it was and Om Birla was elected as the Speaker. Also, as we also heard the Prime Minister as well as the Leader of the Opposition Rahul Gandhi speak on the election of the speaker. We also saw how the Prime Minister as well as the leader of the opposition and the Union Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Kiran Rijiju, escorted Om Birla to the Speaker's chair and the occupation of that chair. This is also after almost 10 years that the House officially has a leader of the opposition. The Congress has nominated, in fact, the opposition has nominated Rahul Gandhi to occupy that post. It is a post of a cabinet minister, so of course he will be consulted on every important decision by the government. But also what is expected of the speaker, as you were asking, is the speaker, as the opposition said, that the speaker's chair is a very crucial chair because he has to maintain decorum. He has to give space equally to both the ruling as well as the opposition parties. So, the opposition also talked about how, the opposition voice would also be, should also be given space to be heard. But this time around, what the opposition is perhaps trying to ascertain through their speeches that we witnessed inside the lower house of Indian Parliament is that, we are much more in number. We represent much more people now. And therefore, the speaker's chair will have to give more voice. But we have also seen how the speaker, it'll be very unfair to say that the speaker in the last session of the 17th Lok Sabha did not give much ears to the opposition. It was not that case. The opposition is trying to make a political point here. But having said that, this time around, the speaker will have to deal with a much more aggressive, a much more, vociferous opposition, given the fact that they have over 240 MPs combined in the opposition's chair being occupied by the opposition leaders in the Lok Sabha. So, of course, it will be much more stronger, much more noisier opposition in the Lok Sabha this time.
All right, Dibyendu, we leave it here. Thank you for joining in with those details from Parliament. All right, so that was our correspondent Dibyendu Mondal telling us more about what could be expected, what is to be expected, in fact, from the tenure of Om Birla as he assumes the chair of the Lok Sabha Speaker for the second consecutive term. And this is the big news of the day. Om Birla being elected as the Lok Sabha Speaker of the 18th Lok Sabha Speaker. And also he assumed office, he assumed the chair in the House, and he was congratulated by Prime Minister, by Parliamentary Affairs Minister, by Leader of the Opposition, and also the leaders of other political parties. So that was the gist of the important news development this morning. Let's turn focus to other updates that we are tracking this hour. India urged for a comprehensive reform in the United Nations Security Council during a debate on the report of the Security Council in United Nations General Assembly. Pratik Mathur, Minister at India's permanent mission to the UN, also said that the reform should involve expansion in both its permanent and non-permanent categories.
It is thus high time to bring the Council in line with its charter responsibilities to act on behalf of the entire membership. This will not be achieved without enhancing the membership of the Council in both categories, permanent as well as non-permanent. We thus remain convinced that the only remedy is a comprehensive reform of the Security Council involving expansion in its permanent and non-permanent categories. Only this can enable the Council to manage effectively today's conflicts around the globe, as well as the increasingly complex and interconnected global challenges the world faces today.
The Indian Parliament passed 3 new criminal laws: the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, and the Bharatiya Sakshay Adhiniyam. This is done to replace the Indian Penal Code 1860, the Criminal Procedure Code 1973, and the Indian Evidence Act 1872. These are soon to be implemented, but there are some myths related to these. DD India gets you this report that busts the myths for you. Take a look.
The newly enacted laws Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita and Bharatiya Sakshay Act, which will completely overhaul the criminal justice system in the country, will come into effect from July 1st this year. The 3 laws got the Parliament's approval on December 21st last year, and President Draupadi Murmu gave her assent on December 25th. The laws will replace the colonial-era Indian Penal Code, the Code of Criminal Procedure and the Indian Evidence Act of 1872. The three legislations aim at completely overhauling the criminal justice system in the country by giving definitions of various offences and their punishments. However, the provision related to cases of hit and run by vehicle drivers will not be implemented immediately. There are several myths related to these three laws. The myth that the extension of police custody from 15 to 19 days is a shocking provision that will enable police torture. Although the truth is that the period of police custody is restricted to 15 days, under BNSS, police custody may be taken in parts or in whole within a period of 40 to 60 days out of the total period of 60 to 90 days as applicable. The court's discretion in granting police custody is retained as earlier. Further, the police custody beyond the first 15 days shall not be an impediment to grant bail to the accused.
And also, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange pleaded guilty to a single felony charge for publishing US military secrets in a deal that secures his freedom and ends a long-fought legal battle. His release ends a 14-year legal saga in which Assange spent more than 5 years in a British high-security jail and 7 years in asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, battling extradition to the US, where he faced 18 criminal charges. Assange entered the plea in a US district court hearing on Saipan on the Northern Mariana Islands, a US-controlled territory chosen due to his refusal to travel to the mainland US and its proximity to his native Australia. Assange, who turns 53 on July 3rd, was wished an early happy birthday by Chief Judge Ramona Manglona. Kenyan President William Ruto is expected to make a statement on the ongoing protests in the country on Wednesday. Earlier, rights groups called for an end to the use of live bullets on protesters after more than 10 people were reportedly killed. Isabel Nakiria gets us more from Uganda.
What began as peaceful protests in Kenya have escalated into chaos and violence, prompting police to fire live bullets and lob tear gas canisters at protesters. Thousands of protesters broke through police barricades and stormed Parliament, setting a section of the House on fire and destroying property. Police vehicles have been torched and several government buildings set on fire. The nationwide protest, sparked by reforms in a controversial finance bill, prompted angry protesters on the streets. They are demanding a complete repeal of the bill that proposes hikes in taxes on several basic items like bread, fuel, cooking oil, and mobile money transactions. Concern is also growing on the alleged abductions of leaders of the protests. Human rights campaigners have condemned the alleged disappearances of several social media influencers in Kenya. Kenyan President William Ruto says he's willing to speak to the protesters and find a way forward. Isabel Nakiria reporting for DD India in Kampala.
The United States has condemned violence reported during protests in Nairobi. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller urged Kenya to show restraint and provide space for dialogue.
So we condemn the violence reported during protests in Nairobi and around Kenya. We mourn the loss of life and injuries sustained and offer our condolences to the families who lost loved ones. We urge restraint to restore order and provide space for dialogue.
The Indian High Commission in Kenya's Nairobi issued an advisory for Indian nationals to exercise utmost caution, restrict non-essential movement and avoid the areas affected by protests and violence till the situation clears up. As unrest continues in Kenya, its long-awaited peacekeeping mission recently arrived in Haiti to combat gang violence in the Caribbean country. Haitian Prime Minister Gary Conille vowed on Tuesday that the state will retake control of the country.
I can tell you that the government is on the way to assuming its responsibilities to assert its position and help the population to live and function normally wherever it may be in the country. Finally, we can see that the international force is here to support us and our police force. So we are going to start working little by little to regain control of the country.
You're watching DD India Live. We're heading for a short break. But after the break, North Korea launches ballistic missile towards sea, which reportedly failed. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belosov held a telephonic conversation on Tuesday and discussed the importance of open lines of communication. Russia's defense ministry said Belosov warned Austin of the dangers of continued U.S. arms supplies to Ukraine in its 28-month-old conflict with Russia.
Secretary Austin also spoke by phone today with Russian Minister of Defense Andrei Belosov. During the call, the Secretary emphasized the importance of maintaining lines of communication amid Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. The last time Secretary Austin spoke to his Russian counterpart, then Russian Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu, was on March 15, 2023.
North Korea's launch of an unknown ballistic missile towards the sea off the east coast of the Korean peninsula appears to have failed. South Korean military said on Wednesday that the apparent failed missile launch originated from around Pyongyang. Japan's defense ministry said the missile flew to an altitude of about 100 kilometers and a range of more than 200 kilometers before falling outside Japan's exclusive economic zone in the Sea of Japan. The missile launch comes a day after the 74th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War. The U.S. Federal Election Commission on Tuesday granted Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump a second 45-day extension to file personal financial disclosures. Trump had initially been due to report on his personal financial situation to the U.S. election body on May 15th, but was granted an extension until July 1st on the request. A legal representative for the former president on Tuesday requested the agency to grant the candidate another extension, citing the complexities of his financial holdings. Trump's financial disclosures are closely watched because they offer an indication of the size of his personal wealth. As world battles extreme weather conditions, damages caused to Rapidan Dam in Minnesota due to heavy rains has made local residents and officials concerned. The dam, severely damaged due to flooding, faced an imminent threat of collapse but was still intact, and there were no mass evacuations on Tuesday. More than 3 million people live in areas impacted by flooding from Iowa to Nebraska to Minnesota to South Dakota. In Brazil, record floods that killed over 170 people and displaced 500,000 are a warning sign of more disasters to come, as per the United Nations. United Nations Refugee Agency said on Tuesday that roughly 389,000 people in the state of Rio Grande do Sul remain displaced from their homes because of the intense rain and flooding. Scientists say climate change made the flooding twice as likely to happen. Back home, the Indian Meteorological Department announced on Tuesday that the heat wave in northern parts of the country will abate soon. But heavy rainfall is expected to cover northeast and western India. Heat wave alerts for Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and also Rajasthan have been issued. Heat wave is likely to continue in Rajasthan over the next 2 days and abate thereafter. In business news, global stock indices mostly climbed on Tuesday, with shares of AI chip maker NVIDIA bouncing after a 3-day sell-off. Meanwhile, dollar gained slightly against the Japanese yen. NVIDIA's stock ended up 6.8%. The Nasdaq jumped more than 1%, also ending a 3-day losing streak. Investors are also gearing up for data on the personal consumption expenditure price index on Friday, which could provide further clues on the inflation picture and when the Fed might begin cutting interest rates. They also await snap elections in France starting at the weekend and the first US presidential debate on Thursday. The benchmark equity indices opened on Wednesday's trading session with sharp gains after hitting fresh record highs. Sensex climbed 135 points to hit all-time high of 78,188 in early trade. Nifty was up 28 points to 23,750. Yes, in yesterday's trade, Nifty surged to a new all-time high at 23,754, boosted by improved risk-on sentiments, while Bank Nifty also performed impressively. RBI Governor Shaktikant Das is confident of India's growth reaching 7.2% this year. Nifty's key support is at 23,591 with resistance at 24,000 mark. Tamil Nadu Dr. Ambedkar Law University conducted an orientation event for journalists on new criminal laws. The main highlight of the program was to throw light and present an in-depth analysis of the new criminal laws passed in the Indian Parliament, which aim at catering to the well-being of the public at large.
Procedural law, namely criminal procedure code, a lot of changes made, and these changes have been made by having regard to our past experience and also having taken note of the various judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court and High Courts. And in respect of IPC, and that is Penal Code, a number of changes have been made. And that is also because the way in which crimes are committed nowadays are something different from the way in which crimes were committed when this law was made in 1860. Therefore, to meet the present day situation, a lot of changes have been made in the IPC.
All right, let's get you updates from the world of sports now. The International Cricket Council on Tuesday announced the match officials for both the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup 2024. Richard Illingworth and Nitin Menon were chosen as the on-field umpires for the first semi-final between Afghanistan and South Africa in the first half in Trinidad on Thursday. Richard Kettleborough will be the TV umpire for the first semi-final, with Ehsan Raza in place as the fourth umpire. An 8-run win against Bangladesh via the DLS method secured safe passage for Afghanistan from the Super 8s at Australia's expense. Meanwhile, Chris Gaffney and Rodney Tucker will umpire the second semi-final between unbeaten India and reigning champions England in Guyana later on Thursday. England booked their place in the final four with a 10-wicket win against co-hosts US, while India put the finishing touches to a perfect Super 8 stage with a 24-run win over Australia. Indian table tennis player Srija Akula achieved a new career high ranking of world number 24 following her victory at the World Table Tennis Contender Tournament in Lagos. The 25-year-old Indian table tennis player jumped 19 places in the latest International Table Tennis Federation rankings released on Monday to displace Manika Batra as the country's top women's singles player. In the thrilling final match held in Lagos, Srija got the better of Ding Yiji of China 4-1. Not only did she secure the singles title, but she also emerged victorious in doubles competition. Consequently, she became the only second Indian woman to make it to the top 25 in women's singles. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.